What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You'll get a free $15 whenever you sign up and you'll be supporting the channel. Additionally, you can become a patron. Not only is that the best way to support the channel, but you'll get to vote weekly on a deck tech that I cover. Special shout out to a high contributing patron, Newsome, you rock. Now let's get into today's deck tech, and hey, you guys rock, because I asked if you guys get my Gonti Ninja deck to 500 likes, I will build a budget version, so here the budget version is. But I quickly realized something. The density of Ninja and the budget thing was not going to work out very well. We already had a very low density of ninjas in the deck, and then after you cut everything that's over $1, you end up with even less, so I kind of went for a whole pivot, and we're going to go into Rogue Tribal instead. Now, Rogues have a lot of benefits here. One, there's just way more of them, so we're going to be able to utilize better tribal synergies like your double down and your reflections of Lajara. Now we can basically double up on every single rogue we cast. We even get to try out this new card Butch, sorry, and he can just turn all of our creatures into rogues. So now whenever we steal creatures from Gonti, we can then turn them into a rogue, further helping our strategy of Rogue Tribal. We get to run Felix 5 Boots here too as well, so it's a rogue, and that's going to double up on all of our Gonti triggers, all of our draw triggers, and then random cards just have rogue printed on them, like Edric Sar, which is just really solid in the deck. So again, now we've got a budget deck. It's still tribal, but we're going rogues instead of ninjas. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. Without further ado, let's get into these rogues that we're going to run. Anawan seems like a no-brainer since this is a rogue tribal deck. He gives them a little bit of a buff. We're going to mill our opponents, and whenever they mill a creature card, we are going to draw a card. Felix 5 Boots is just going to double up on all of our combat triggers in the deck, and there is quite a few of them since that's kind of what this deck is built around. Yisan the Wanderer Bard just so happens to have rogue tacked onto it, so now we can have a tutor chain that leads us to our Brain Stealer Dragon, and even our Hordling Broodlord, and we're just going to accrue value along the way. Rankle Master of Pranks is going to be solid here, just some good card advantage. We can make people discard some stuff. Again, we don't care too much about our hand in this deck, since again, we are stealing cards from our opponent's library, so the discard effect can actually be pretty brutal here. Zareth is going to be solid, just another way we can steal cards from our opponents, especially if we are milling them a little bit. Gonti Lord of Luxury, more ways we can again steal cards from our opponents. Ghostly Pilferer, I really like the idea of getting card advantage whenever someone casts a spell anywhere other than their hand. That didn't used to be as common as it is now, so I'm sure we are going to see quite a bit of cards off this guy, and then he can make something unblockable. Edric Sar, again, synergizes amazingly with the deck and just so happens to be an elf rogue. Orochi Soul Reaver, another thing that's going to net us treasure tokens, and it is a rogue as well. So now we're getting our card advantage from Edric, and we're getting our ramp from Soul Reaver. Geralf the Flashlight. Now this guy is not a rogue, but he can make a lot of them. Notably, something that I think people might be missing about this card is this is not once per turn. So every spell after your first one is going to create a zombie. That's absolutely broken. Butch is honestly just going to be massive in this deck, and it's going to be a solid way we can turn the creatures we're stealing from our opponents into rogues themselves. Smirking Spelljack. This is kind of a 4 CMC counterspell, but it's a 4 CMC counterspell that allows you to steal the spell, and then you get to cast that spell for free without paying its mana cost. So if someone's telegraphing a massive turn, keep this girl up. Una's Blackguard. Now, I don't know if this card's okay, but it's going to be extremely funny. We are going to literally take our opponent's hands and then play cards off of the top of their library, and then we're just going to watch them get as salty as possible. Cephalid Face Taker is just going to turn into a copy of something else, so maybe we can turn it into our Aurum Frostfang effects. There's a lot of different ways this card's going to be useful, especially when we are stealing our opponent's cards. Visage Bandit, again, something that's going to copy something that's already on the battlefield from our side. Very flexible when you are stealing your opponent's decks. Mercurial Spelldancer, this one's going to be very good. It's just a solid unblockable rogue that eventually lets you copy an instant sorcery spell. We're just going to take that. And then from there, we're playing a lot of unblockable rogues or invasive rogue creatures that are just going to help us trigger our commander Gonti. Mari the Killing Quill is not a rogue herself, but she's going to do a lot for this deck. One, it's going to get rid of those graveyard strategies that are going to be pretty annoying with us milling our opponents. And then we can get benefits off of the creatures we mill skill by just removing those hit counters, drawing a card, and generating 2 treasure tokens. Prosperous Thief, again, this one's a ninja, but turns out it triggers on rogues as well. So now those rogues are generating treasure tokens whenever they're dealing combat damage. Thieving Skydancer is just another way we can steal our opponent's ramp, or maybe they do have equipment on the battlefield. Tegwill's Scoring kind of seems perfect in this deck. It's a board wipe that nets us 3 black fairy rogue creatures whenever it resolves. So then on our next turn, we can just cast Gonti, attack with those 3 rogues, and start triggering him very consistently again. We have Double Down and Reflections of Litjara. These ones are going to be perfect. They're basically just going to double up on every single rogue that we cast. We do have some legendaries, but the majority of them are not, and they're just unblockable creatures. So this is going to be very welcome in the deck. Moving on to the core of the deck, we have your Hordling Broodlord. This is going to be amazing with our commander. Now we can tap all of those rogues to cast our opponent's big spells. Not to mention it does just tutor up a card whenever it enters the battlefield. Brainstealer Dragon was kind of meant for this strategy. We're going to steal our opponent's spells and we're going to cast them, and whenever we cast them, we're going to ding them in the face equal to the CMC. And then out of nowhere, it's just a 6/6 that looks amazing. The Indomitable, Biden of Thassa, Orin Frostfang, all very good card advantage pieces in this deck, and Orin Frostfang along with Biden of Thassa will make it to where our opponents are either open or it makes our creatures even harder to block. Grazilex is going to be pretty solid at protecting our key pieces. Additionally, we have other cards in the deck that do have ETBs or cast triggers, so being able to return those back to our hand can actually be pretty useful. Beastmaster's Ascension, the goal of this deck is to attack with all of our creatures every single turn very consistently, so it's not very hard to get 7 counters on this, and then those 1/1 unblockable rogues are now hitting you for 6 damage. That's going to get pretty hard to deal with very quickly. Savvy Trader and Doc Arlock are going to be amazing in this deck, just reducing the cards that we're casting from exile from our opponent's library basically, right? Additionally, Savvy Trader does have some added benefit of returning a permanent card from our graveyard to exile that we then cast. I wanted a little bit more evasive creatures with some added utility, so Siren Storm Tamer, Terragon, Predator, and Mist-Cloaked Herald is just unblockable in 1 mana, so they're going to fit perfectly in the deck. Canopy Covers can easily be shoved on our commander to help protect it, also makes it unblockable so he can trigger himself pretty easily. Mists of Lorien is a pretty underrated removal spell in my opinion, especially if you play against a lot of token decks. We're not creating a lot of tokens in this deck, so it's going to be pretty solid just to cast this, say 0, and then bounce everybody's board. And it does have Replicate, so in a pinch, you can even bounce more CMC things. Now, notably, it does bounce our stuff also, but sometimes that can actually be a benefit depending on what we're bouncing back to our hand. That's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you for getting my Gonti Ninja deck to 500 likes. I really appreciate it. With that being said, I would like to shout out my patrons, Newsome, Excessum, Chicken Salad, and Praetor. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you guys in the next one.